My fiancé asked me to start dating him right before our wedding. I later realized that he had been influenced for months by his guru pals. As the headline suggests, I, 28, and my fiancé, John, 28, have been dating for over 5 years. I must offer you with some background information so that you can understand the problem. Despite the fact that it affected us in quite different ways, we both came from deeply religious backgrounds. John became a troublemaker who ran away and caused problems, and eventually finding a group that his parents would disapprove of. The bulk of this group's members were atheists or followers of other religions, used marijuana, marched in protests, and belonged to the LGBTQ community. This group of persons comprised his present circle of friends, however some have since moved away. Avery, 33M, and Alex, 35NB, are the two key ringleaders according to what I've heard. They gathered damaged folks and enabled them to couch surf when circumstances were bad, as John once quipped. I will not go into detail about each of them. Avery works in information technology or something, and Alex is a nepotistic baby. When John was 15, he met them. Since John characterized their relationship to that of a parent and child, I was intrigued and couldn't wait to meet them. They are clearly highly important persons in his life. However, I was little disappointed by our first encounter, which occurred when we were 21 years old, in college, and home for the summer. John mentioned that they constantly need to break in new people, so I tried to think optimistically and do my best to impress them with what I was learning and my future aspirations, both personally and in terms of my relationship. Alex was catty and made nasty remarks since I was not LGBTQ or anything, just bi-curious, and Avery treated me like a child. They looked to loathe me more as I spoke. John seemed overjoyed to see them again and talked about how much they liked me, so I kept my mouth shut and merely nodded in agreement, despite the unpleasant experience. To further understand who Alex and Avery are, suppose that they are local superstars in the town where they live. They are very spiritual, have a house packed with memorabilia from all of their travels, and are married, albeit they define marriage quite differently than the traditional definition. They apparently took hallucinogens together while in a tropical state and expressed their undying love for one another. It sounds odd to someone like me, but since leaving for college, I've learned to be more accommodating. They also claim to admire my fiancés and to be able to detect auras, whatever they were. They probably don't think highly of me, but I'm not sure. This brings us to the topic I brought with me. Last week, when we got home from work, John asked me what I felt about being in a polygamous relationship. He said that he loves me more than he can ever say, and that he is unsure what to do with the rest, feeling that it would be best to give it to someone else. However, I have no boundaries on how much I may admire him. That is what occurred after I answered no. However, the question has been troubling me since then. If you knew anything about John, you'd know he conducts extensive research before making any decisions, any changes in relationships or lifestyles. This signals to me that he has already considered it and has talked it with Avery or Alex N. Although I don't want to present them in a bad light, I am confident that they are not monogamous and despise me more than the other members of their little circle. I simply have a bad feeling that they drew John in, and I don't want to blame anyone. I also won't ask John to reveal me his communications with them until I have specific proof that it's more than just a gut feeling. He could not have came up with the concept on his own. Non-monogamy was never addressed during our 5 years of dating, so why is he bringing it up immediately before our wedding? Even if I absolutely disagree, I can't just go ahead and confront them right now, right? I just don't know how to proceed. I'm trapped within the home. When I look at John, all I can think about is how he thinks he can only love me so much and wants to love someone else. I behave as if everything is fine since my close friends told me I'm just overthinking things, and I believed them for a while. I'm not sure how to handle this, but I want to. If I bring it up with John, he will either disregard it or assume I am cheating or that I do not trust his friends. I worked hard to gain their favor, and I'm sure John told them everything. This was not something he'd keep to himself. I'm just hoping that someone here can assist me figure out what to do next. Regards. Comments to which the operator answered, "Degenerate to Tilliker, end it if you don't swing that way once you're married. Things will only get worse. You can't make any concessions on this. You do not want to fuck others, but he does. God, it's scary to consider breaking up with you. Since going for college, I feel as if I've concentrated my entire existence on him. And I'm worried I'll fall apart if we part ways. I get where you're coming from, but I'll need more time to process everything. Why are we 94? Tilde? Avoid becoming indoctrinated by them. People are regularly attracted into the lives of others just to be suddenly ripped from them. It will cause you to rethink your identity. It ruined me. And I have been there. What if you followed their lead and were later rejected? It's hard to recover from. Furthermore, I am not making my comment only out of sexual desire. New Age jargon or auras, paired with abrupt changes in sexual preferences. It can gravely destabilize a person. If you already feel like you're being pushed out of the group, then he makes this request. That's a bad sign. Many individuals love this feature, which is similar to a give mind or a popular clique. Furthermore, the idea that he loves you more than anybody else is a poor cop-out and a common explanation used by people to persuade their soda tripoli or open. It is often used to express guilt. He appears to be insinuating that you are avaricious for wanting to keep your relationship hidden and exclusive. Simply said, use cautious. I do not want you to face the same fate as I did. You risk major injury if you commit to someone whose personality and manner of life are rapidly changing. I'd be cautious about how much you put in him if he's truly changing in this way. I only bring this up because, in the end, my ex began spending more time with a group of college friends, and I was completely committed to her. We got into a little parking fight one day, and she ended up declaring that we needed to split up since she wasn't sure what sex she was attracted to anymore, or even whether she was still female. I wouldn't mind supporting them in self-discovery, but she saw it as a way to end our relationship. I believe it was more about her want to have fun than anything else, and it was influenced by her group of friends who came out around the same time and were either single or exploring. She must have experienced FOMO TBH as she watched them have a great time. For her, this was an opportunity to regain the joy she may have lost while in a relationship. For me, it meant losing a part of myself that I had cherished for many years. I honestly hope John isn't using this as a way to catch up or to end the relationship. Although that does not sound like him, I will remember it. Update September 17th, 2024. I genuinely appreciate all of your nice words and genuine advice. To avoid sounding cheesy, I did not expect more than 100 comments and a few kind private messages. I apologize for my delayed answer. It was extremely difficult. When anything major happens, I'll provide an update. And I believe this is it. Let me fill in some holes in my story first, before I get ahead of myself. John and I had comparable upbringings, although my family was a little more tolerant, allowing me to attend college because I performed well academically. My aim was to return home after finishing my degree, finding job, getting married, and living a normal life, but that clearly did not work out because I met John, who drastically changed the direction of my life. I changed my major after a year to something more enjoyable, and I haven't spoken to my parents in a long time. They disapproved. Of course, with John's help, I refused to comply with their request to return. They are now aware that I am getting married and have been invited, but we last spoke around 2 months ago. John hasn't communicated with his parents since he was 18. They like me. They were plainly dubious at first since I was a cishet white passing lady, but they warmed up to me. And I'm glad to call them friends. I didn't write about the buddy group in great detail at first since I didn't think they were that important. The only exceptions are those who have referred to me as the wife in an odd, almost derogatory manner since John and I began our formal relationship. Even though it isn't a critical component, I find it bothersome. Last but not least, while I haven't indicated that I want to be with a woman in a committed relationship of that scale, John agreed that expanding the connection would result in my getting acquainted, either physically or emotionally, with others. Nonetheless, he stated that it is an excellent chance for me to explore my bisexual side. Let's get started. I messaged John 2 days earlier, indicating that we needed to chat. He works from home. I don't, so we sat down to go over his plan in detail as soon as I got home. He seemed almost apologetic, and I had the idea he knew what it would be about, but I opted to disregard that and simply vocally spewed everything that had been on my mind. This is humiliating since I was prepared for a mature discourse and wrote down a lot of the advice in the comments. However, at the end of my easy 15-minute tirade, I was weeping and he had to hold me back from breaking apart. I basically said that I'm wounded because he wants to have sex with other people and doesn't care whether I do the same. He also stated that he believes there is a limit to how much he can love me, and I'm not sure how this all happened. Finally, he surprised me only a few months before our wedding. Yes, we tried to have a mature talk, but in the end, he was furious. He apologized for making me feel inferior, but he argued that my approach to open relationships is self-centered. Essentially, he thinks he didn't have enough time to figure out who he was before committing to me. He made no hint that he wanted more than I could supply, therefore it's rubbish. We enjoyed a wonderful 5 years together, and I honestly believed I had discovered my real love. Since we were engaged, I saw that he started talking more to his friends and hence to Avery and Alex. Once again, I don't want to represent them as cartoonish evil people. They're intriguing, but all I want to do right now is pull those egotistical, self-centered grins off their faces. When I eventually insisted on viewing his phone, he appeared surprised. We agreed that we may look at each other's phones, but because our relationship is built on trust and neither of us wanted to be the relationship's jailer, we didn't exchange passwords or anything else. He unlocked his phone, however, and handed it to me. I went through all of his texts, including those that had been wiped, and found nothing strange. After that, I checked the call log, and you know what? Calls to and from Alex or Avery lasted many hours. I was upset and asked him, what the hell is he doing talking to them about this for so long? These dates were months ago. John eventually gave up and said that they were the ones who originally offered the idea of an open relationship, but they also spoke about anything else since they're role models or Sue. John recognized that he needed a safe environment to discuss this because he had began to reconsider his position some time ago. I think I am not safe as his future wife? Make it make sense, please. So, why get married to me? He told me that he would schedule an urgent session with his therapist, and that we would meet with a couples counselor to settle all of this, including his marital troubles, the open relationship issue, and everything else. That he just wants to be with me because he loves me. We retired to bed because it was late. As chaotic as everything appears to be, knowing that, despite the fact that my post may not reflect it, I actually love him gives me a bit more peace of mind. I was willing to go above and beyond to make things work, despite many people's advice to simply depart. I want it to be the ultimate option. Guess who is the fool, though? I awoke this morning to find my flat unoccupied and a message on my phone from John expressing that he needs some time to digest things and would need space. He did not disclose his destination or planned return time. I messaged and emailed everyone I knew, but no one could furnish me with John's location. I informed him that this would stop if he did not come home within the following 24 hours. As you could expect, I'm a total mess. In between weeping and staring at the wall, I feverishly checked my messages, hoping that someone would tell me where John was. I took the rest of the week off. I'm not sure I want to be with him if he's willing to put me through this, to be honest. How can you treat a loved one in this manner? The next story. I named my daughter Annabelle after my husband's grandmother. I subsequently realized that my father's affair partner shared that name. I 26F recently gave birth to my daughter, Annabelle. I didn't make the announcement ahead of time since one of my family members had previously stolen a baby name, which caused a lot of grief. I was determined to keep it a secret, but my mother wanted to know. My parents were present when I gave birth, and when it came time for me to sign the birth certificate, I told my mother I was named Annabelle. My father didn't seem too delighted, but he professed to enjoy the name and her face paled. My mother left. After a few minutes, stating she was not feeling well. She offered to assist with the baby by coming over in a few days. My mother hasn't said anything to me since I moved in with the baby. I was perplexed by this sudden behavior, because we used to communicate every day. I invited my sister Emily over to speak because she still lives with my mother. She explained that when she came at my house she heard her mother and father screaming because her father had an affair with a coworker named Annabelle around 10 years ago. He's been trying to get Mom to speak to him since she hasn't. I imagine Dad chose to come over after observing Emily's arrival. He wondered whether it was possible for me to change Annabelle's name. In an attempt to obtain the truth, I asked him why. He admitted the affair, and he did. He begged his mother to stay with him, and she agreed, although the mere mention of that word had always made her uncomfortable. I informed him that I couldn't, and that my husband's grandmother, Annabelle, had helped with his upbringing. My father advised me to make the necessary adjustments, reporting that her mother was now gathering her stuff and making her way to her sister's house. I informed him how much her name means to my spouse and me, and that I would not change it. As soon as he raised his voice, my sister yelled back, urging him to get the hell out. He created a mess, but she told him not to worry about it. He left immediately away. I believe this is ruining the family, but I will not change the name of my child. What should I do? A minor edit was made. Her name is not Annabelle. Her real name is only 3 letters long, thus it would be hard to develop a nickname based on that. Many of you suggested altering her first name to her middle name, but I do not want to do so because her second name is my mother's. For further details, see on name her child for her parents. This should not be an issue, yet it is. My spouse was raised by his grandmother because his mother had given birth to him when he was quite young. This is our way of paying respect to her, who passed away recently. We've been named her Annabelle for the past 6 months because she is the baby we've been hoping for. Since this is also my husband's child, his feelings are more significant in this case than my mother's. As hard as this is for my mother, my husband and I talked about it. His grandma was a superwoman. My father wounded my mother, therefore I can't harm my husband. Didn't know about the affair? It is up to my father, not me, to correct the situation. I didn't realize until 4 days later that she may have given her daughter a different name. The paperwork has already been done, and while changing the name would incur additional money, should do so to alleviate stress for all parties involved. Why does a negative situation take precedence over a positive one? This may sound self-serving. I understand my mother's anguish. What about my husband's grandma, who sacrificed years, money, and time for a kid she didn't have? In this scenario, I think the advantages outweigh the negatives. This is also my husband's child. In this instance, his grandma is just as important as my mother. Has Oop talked about the related name with her mother? Not about this, Oops. I only found out about it this morning. However, the preceding several days have only consisted of quick 3-minute talks. I knew she was disturbed by something, but I didn't know what until now. Sept. 27, 2024. My sister then visited my aunt's house to address the problem with my mother. My mother then stopped by to talk. She cried as she apologized for being distant and admitted that it was inappropriate for her to keep us in the dark about what was going on. She said that the name first surprised her, but she saw how important Annabelle was to my husband and swore never to hinder her attempts to nurture him. I asked why she hid the affair from us. She said this because she knew she was mentally unable of leaving and did not want to give the appearance that it was okay to stay with a man who had cheated on her. When I asked if she planned to leave her father, she said she wasn't sure. She stated that she has never moved on from the affair and feels bad over ruining her granddaughter's birth. When I asked if she had a nickname she wanted to use, she answered no, and that she wanted to honor Annabelle's great-grandmother. We exchanged embraces and spoke. Thus, I believe that everything is well. Why can't Oop disagree with her husband's choice of name for their daughter? She is entitled to select the Oop name. How can I be selfish when my husband wants to honor his grandmother? In a way, my husband's grandmother is his mother. That's not what he said. He was saying that it was probably for the best, even though he didn't want to alter anything. My spouse has no control over my thoughts or how I react to her. Yes, there remains an issue. Even if she hasn't felt them yet, she is saying things. And if she gets divorced, that will be a major setback. When your sister begins pressing her to obtain a divorce, she will surely blame your kid for her life's demise. I recognize that this is a possibility, but I am very convinced that no one will hold my child accountable. My father will take full responsibility. My aunt even persuaded her that my father is the only one at fault, and that the baby is innocent. My mother looks up to my aunt and often follows her advice. It's probably going to happen since I'm sure my aunt was encouraging her to file for divorce. Oop, how will she explain her name to her child when she is older? The story of the lady who looked after her father while his mother was doing drugs will be related to them. Oop. She'll explain how she stopped her grandson from committing suicide. They will discover how his mother saved money for his schooling by working 2 jobs. She will hear of her great-grandmother's tremendous sacrifices to attend every baseball and football game. That, in my perspective, is more essential than my father's affair partner Oop having an affair with her father. The difficulty is that I've never seen my father behave in this manner. As a result, I will refrain from communicating with Annabelle until she is older and I have left the birth. I'll follow up with him after that, and if he continues to blame me, I'll permanently change to NC. 29th September, 2024. As a result, I'll be splitting from both of my parents. I thought it was terrific that my mother was going to get treatment for herself and couples counseling. I believe my father has read that if he wants to move on, he must be completely honest about the situation. My father teaches science in a high school, so Annabelle was a student rather than a coworker. She was in his AP class as a senior, and he had previously taught her as a freshman. They added each other on Facebook after she graduated at the age of 17, which I believe is where it all began. If my mother knew Annabelle was a student rather than a coworker, I would question her. She wept and said that she did. I asked her how she could be with such a person. She did not react to me. He disgusted my sister, who labeled him a kid lover and cursed him. She promised never to speak with him again. I agreed with her, and told my mother that if she thought my father's acts were okay, I wouldn't let my children near her. According to my father, Annabelle was an adult, and their connection was a mistake. He went on to suggest that if being open about the situation just made matters worse, it was a mistake. I don't mind that my sister moved in with me because the house has enough of space. I can't talk to either of my parents right now, despite the fact that they've been blowing up our phones.